Chapter 1990, Cliff Face. Chapter 1990, Cliff Face Seniors. Have all of you arrived from other continents? The youth asked as he smiled at Yi Futian's group. Replied Beigong Ao as he nodded his head. We heard about the news from Turtle Deity Island, and have come here from distant lands. My name is Lin Yuan. This here is my path companion Lu Qing, said the youth. After the news regarding Turtle Deity Island got out, cultivators from various continents have come to the Divine Ocean continent. This place is somewhat famous in the Divine Ocean continent. However, it is not very well known outside since there are many ruins in the Divine Prefecture. Recently, there have been many visitors like yourselves who have stopped to take a look when they come across this place. Across the years, has no one managed to comprehend the way carved into the cliff face? Asked Yi Futian. I do not know. Each person might be able to comprehend bits and pieces, Lin Yuan replied. However, rumor has it that the drawings are scattered. Back then, Thunder-Punishing Skylord carved 30 years' worth of his insights here. This axe technique is rumored to have come into being when his way was complete. Different cultivators will have their own understanding of it. As for whether or not anyone has completely comprehended the entire set, we won't be able to know. I see, replied Yi Futian as he nodded his head. Seniors, your temperaments are extraordinary. You must be from top forces of other continents, right? Lin Yuan asked. Yi Futian looked at him and saw a faint look of anticipation in Lin Yuan's eyes. I guess you could say that, answered Yi Futian as he nodded with a smile. May I move alongside all of you? I am willing to act as your guide, Lin Yuan asked as he bowed slightly. When Yi Futian heard him say this, he turned to look at Lin Yuan. With a smile, Yi Futian pointed out. You want to attend the ceremony on Turtle Deity Island, don't you? The couple did not have powerful cultivation. For top figures, the Divine Ocean continent was not considered large. However, for sages it was still massive. With their cultivation planes, they would also most likely be unqualified to step onto Turtle Deity Island. However, they did not want to miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now that they had encountered Yi Futian's group, and Lin Yuan saw that Yi Futian had an extraordinary temperament and was well-mannered, he took his chance. He wanted to pay a visit to Turtle Deity Island. Although Lin Yuan was very far from reaching the next plane, this might be the only chance in his life for him to have the opportunity to witness a top figure face a divine tribulation. If he missed it this time, he might not get another chance in this lifetime. When Yi Futian saw the hopeful look in the other party's eyes, he smiled and said, Let's try our luck. If I can comprehend the way of the great path from the cliff face, I will bring you along with us. If I am unable to do so, then we will not bring you with us. When Lin Yuan heard Yi Futian say this, a look of disappointment flashed past in his eyes. Although Yi Futian's group might be a top force from other continents, Thunder-Punishing Skylord had been the one who carved the way into the cliff face. Many prominent figures in the Divine Ocean continent had come here before. Although they each had their own snippets of understanding, no one dared to claim that they had completely comprehended the way of the great path on the cliff face. Even though Yi Futian had an extraordinary temperament, there was still little chance of him succeeding. His disappointment was gone in a flash. Lin Yuan smiled and said, Senior, you will certainly be able to do so. Yi Futian smiled. Lin Yuan got up from where he was sitting on the reef and said, Senior, please sit. As he said this, he stepped away from the reef. Yi Futian did not hesitate and walked up to Lin Yuan's spot. Yi Futian glanced at the cliff face before him. In front of him, many people stood, comprehending the cliff face from different locations. You really want to go to Turtle Deity Island, don't you? Lu Qing asked Lin Yuan over thought transmission as she looked at him. Lin Yuan replied as he nodded his head. This is a chance that comes once every 1,000 years. Even if I cannot make it in, I want to watch from the outside. Facing a divine tribulation might shake the entire Turtle Deity Island, and might also be visible from the outside. Lu Qing said, Our cultivation is not bad. However, just as you said, this is an occasion that comes once every 1,000 years. These past few days, cultivators have been passing over us every day. All the top figures of the entire Donghua domain will be coming. With our cultivation we have no standing. If the disturbances during the divine tribulation are too great, or there are other accidents, our abilities will most likely be of no help. It seemed as though she did not want to go. Facing the top figures of the Donghua domain, who had gathered, made her feel pressured. This was also a divine tribulation, which might cause a huge disturbance. It was a rare event in 1,000 years. A slight mishap would be catastrophic. When that happened, their measly cultivation would not be sufficient to cope. Hence, Lu Qing was slightly conservative. She was afraid of the potential dangers. She felt that such an occasion would not end peacefully. If they were to follow Yi Futian's group to the island, the risk would be even greater. Lin Yuan countered. Back then, thunder-punishing Skylord carved his way here for 30 years when he sought his way. In the end, he succeeded in earning the title Skylord. With my current cultivation plane, what right do I have not to pursue my way and expand my horizons? By observing the divine tribulation, even if we can only comprehend very little of it, its significance for us will be extraordinary. Lin Yuan held Lu Qing's hands as he spoke. Lu Qing nodded her head slightly. This time, she would follow him and see this world's strongest tribulation. Yi Futian looked at the cliff face. His gaze became extremely bizarre. A fascinating beauty emanated from his figure. He looked at the patterns that seemed like runes. They resembled a person training with a war axe. At that moment, in his mind, it was as though these people were moving, swinging the war axe around. Incredible! Yi Futian praised when he sensed the will of the war axe. This war axe was mighty. However, this did not seem difficult. He could clearly sense the might of the great path within these drawings, and could comprehend them very easily. Next, Yi Futian turned towards the second drawing. It was slightly different from the previous one, yet also very similar. Both were awe-inspiring axe techniques. Yi Futian quietly stood there and comprehended the techniques. Beside him, Beigong Ao and Beigong Shuang were also looking at the cliff face and comprehending the techniques. Just as Lin Yuan had said, each person would have a different understanding of the drawings. Behind them, Lin Yuan watched them silently. Although he did not have high hopes for them to succeed, he still waited there quietly. He could also cultivate while waiting for them. In the divine ocean, before the cliff face, many people were discussing frantically, debating about the way on the cliff face. At that moment, more people descended from the sky and landed before the cliff face. This group of people similarly were beyond average. Each person had an extraordinary temperament. This was left behind after thunder-punishing Skylord comprehended his way back then. Rumor has it that there is a treasure left behind by him in the cliff face. Whoever can master the technique will be able to obtain this treasure, said a youth right then as he looked at a woman beside him. This woman had an outstanding appearance. She had an otherworldly air to her, as though she was a goddess. This caused many people to steal glances at her. However, they soon shifted their gazes away, not daring to stare too long. At a glance, one could tell that these two groups of people who had arrived were not from ordinary backgrounds. Everyone was aware of the current situation in the Divine Ocean continent. Cultivators had gathered in droves. Many of them could not be offended. Hence, everyone would try to keep a low profile. The people who arrived were most likely cultivators from top forces from outside the Divine Ocean continent. No one would dare act rudely towards them. The technique is very powerful, said the woman as she glanced at the cliff face. It was as though she could tell at a glance, and could not help but give praise. I have seen Thunder punishing Skylord before. Back then, he visited our manor as a guest. Senior Thunder punishing Skylord is an outstanding figure. The techniques he left behind would naturally be extremely powerful, stated the youth as he smiled slightly. Immediately, many people cast sideways glances at him. His words implied many things. Thunder punishing Skylord had previously visited his manor as a guest? What did this mean? That meant that the clan, which this youth was from, had an existence at the same level as Thunder punishing Skylord. Only then would they be qualified for Thunder punishing Skylord to visit them. Without a doubt, this youth was from a superpower. The woman was not surprised. She clearly knew that the youth's clan had the means to do so. They were indeed from a superpower. They were from the Donghua heavens. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1991, Dispute. Chapter 1991. Dispute. Donghua Heavens was the main continent of the Donghua domain. It was situated in the center of the Donghua domain. People did not like to refer to it as the Donghua continent, instead calling it Donghua Heavens. The manor of the domain chief of the Donghua domain was also in the Donghua Heavens. As the main continent, the overall ability of the cultivators of the Donghua Heavens was definitely the strongest in the entire domain. They had countless cultivators. The occasion on Turtle Deity Island had stirred up the Donghua domain. The cultivators of Donghua Heavens were similarly drawn to this place. When Yi Futian heard that the other party had actually seen Thunder punishing Skylord before, he could not help but glance over. Yet Yi Futian was not too surprised about this. He had seen Princess Donghuang 3 times, and had also encountered Emperor Yi Qing before. How many people could claim having done the same? The youth's words could scare some people, but Yi Futian was unfazed. He shifted his gaze back to the cliff face, and continued to cultivate in peace. After the various cultivators sized up the other party, they also began to train on their own. Now cultivators were gathering in the Divine Ocean continent. In reality, this had little to do with them. They were only here to witness the spectacle. Yi Futian comprehended the way on the cliff face quietly. After a long while, he even closed his eyes. In his life palace, an illusory figure sat cross-legged. Purple light flooded the sky, and terrifying thunder clapped. He sat alone in his mind palace, seemingly surrounded by countless illusory figures. Each figure was showing a different pose. Their war axes cleaved out, causing the space to look like the apocalypse. Each will of the war axe was frightening beyond comparison. At that moment, Yi Futian seemed to transcend space and time. He traveled back into the past and personally witnessed Thunder punishing Skylord cultivating his axe technique. All these scenes appeared in this space. Each axe swing contained extraordinary will and seemed very natural. They became one with the great path. Yet, Yi Futian could not completely comprehend it, no matter how he tried. Uncle Beigong, little Shuang, both of you should sense this, Yi Futian said. When the two of them heard him say this, they treated it seriously and quickly sat down. They knew how powerful Yi Futian's comprehension was. Before this, on Eastern Deity Island, Yi Futian had helped them comprehend. They also cultivated the power of the Great Path of Thunder. Yi Futian could help them out effectively. Light radiated from Yi Futian's glabella. It was as though scenes were directly transmitted into Beigong Ao and Beigong Shuang's minds, allowing the two of them to comprehend together with him. The two of them closed their eyes as they received the images sent over by Yi Futian. As expected, his comprehension was more in-depth than their own. It was clear as day. It was as though they had returned to the time when Thunder punishing Skylord was cultivating. After a long while, Yi Futian stopped cultivating. The two of them continued comprehending on their own. Yi Futian glanced over at the drawings on the surrounding cliff faces. He looked at the markings. There seemed to be many axe marks that were one with the cliff face, as though they were carved by the simplest axe swing. These marks did not contain any will, only leaving behind marks. Many marks contained the will of the Great Path. All this seemed very erratic. Yi Futian could not make out the true meaning of Thunder punishing Skylord carving these marks. Right then, the Run Huang from the Donghua Heavens said, Thunder punishing Skylord comprehended his way here for decades, carving these axe techniques into the cliff face. As expected, the axe techniques are extraordinary. Each axe swing can be its own form of attack. These attacks can be combined into one complete set of axe techniques naturally. However, wanting to comprehend this set of techniques does not seem easy. The woman beside him looked ahead. However, she did not say anything. What she felt from the cliff face was not quite the same as what the other party sensed. At that moment, Beigong Shuang also opened her eyes and looked at the cliff face. Her beautiful eyes looked towards Yi Futian. She asked, "Have you comprehended it? Each axe technique can serve as its own attack. With enough time, I can comprehend all of them. However, I have yet to comprehend them as a whole, Yi Futian said as he shook his head. He could not make any heads or tails of it. He did not know how to merge them perfectly. Commented Beigong Shuang as she nodded. Could it be that there is no relation between them in the first place? Maybe each form of the axe technique was simply carved by thunder-punishing Skylord without any real thought to it? It might not even be a complete set of war axe techniques? When Yi Futian heard what Beigong Shuang said, a strange look flashed past through his eyes. If they did not try to make it one complete set, it was indeed explainable. However, had thunder-punishing Skylord been simply carving when he left these drawings here? They do seem to be independent of each other. However, if that is the case, someone should have comprehended it already. Why is it that no one has managed to solve the secret of the cliff face? Yi Futian asked. Unless the rumors of the cliff face are false, and that there are no secrets here. This place was just the training grounds of thunder-punishing Skylord. Beigong Shuang also did not understand. She mumbled. However, I feel that each axe technique is independent. Is it because my cultivation is too low? You might be correct, Yi Futian said with a smile. Beigong Shuang was a straightforward person. Such people would not read too deeply into situations, and were not easily influenced by others. If she saw it that way, that was what she believed. She might be wrong and be unable to comprehend it because her cultivation was too low. Even so, that was her cultivation path. How true is the rumor that thunder-punishing Skylord left a treasure in the cliff face? Yi Futian asked Lin Yuan, who was behind him. Lin Yuan was a cultivator from the Divine Ocean continent. He should be more familiar with this. There are many rumors regarding this in the Divine Ocean. Over time, most people were willing to believe it was true. Lin Yuan replied with a smile. However, I am not too sure on whether or not it is true. It might be that what this senior female Renhuang said is true. Thunder-punishing Skylord might have simply carved all this when he was cultivating here, and comprehending his way for decades. It is hard to say. She is wrong, a voice stated. Lin Yuan looked ahead. The person who had spoken was the Renhuang, who claimed to have seen thunder-punishing Skylord before. He stood before the cliff face with his back towards Yi Futian's group. He said, Thunder-punishing Skylord left behind these drawings of axe techniques. They are a complete set. It is difficult to comprehend. Since you cannot comprehend it, don't draw conclusions so easily. Based on my knowledge, the rumor that thunder-punishing Skylord left behind a treasure here is true. When the crowd heard him say this, they acknowledged his view. This person had an extraordinary temperament and very powerful cultivation. He had also seen thunder-punishing Skylord before. What he said should be true. Senior, what you said is also reasonable. It might be the case, answered Lin Yuan. With his level of cultivation, he would not dispute the other party. He was not qualified to do so. Not just might. It is the case, the youth continued. Just a while ago, he had told the woman beside him this. These axe techniques were one complete set. However, Beigong Shuang and the others claimed it to be otherwise. Have you comprehended it? Beigong Shuang asked as he looked at the other party's silhouette. How could the teachings of the Skylord be so easily comprehended? The other party replied. Since you have yet to comprehend it, how are you so certain that I am wrong? Beigong Shuang retorted. Her tone was very calm. She was not intentionally trying to argue with him. Since the other party had yet to comprehend it, there was still a possibility for her to be correct. She just found it strange that the other party had come to this conclusion. If the other party actually explained his reasoning, she would naturally accept it humbly. The other party turned his head around for the first time. He looked at Beigong Shuang and said with a smile, Thunder-punishing Skylord once had a treasure. However, after he broke through to the next plane, he never used it again. The last time when he came to my manor, a senior of my clan brought this up with Thunder-punishing Skylord. Thunder-punishing Skylord claimed that after comprehending his way for decades, he did not need it anymore. If so, where is that treasure now? Beigong Shuang nodded her head. That meant to say that there was indeed the possibility that there was a treasure hidden here. Since no one has destroyed the cliff face, that means that it cannot be destroyed. How could these drawings simply be carved by thunder-punishing Skylord? The other party continued his line of reasoning. Beigong Shuang nodded her head and said, "What you say is not without reason, but still does not explain everything." The other party was stunned. He gave Beigong Shuang a strange look. He thought that Beigong Shuang was intentionally arguing with him. "With your level of cultivation, you are not yet qualified to discuss the way with me. If I say you are wrong," he said indifferently. His tone also seemed colder. He glanced over at Yi Futian's group. These people were probably from a large force. However, he was not too concerned. In the Donghua domain, there were few forces whom he could not afford to offend. Beigong Shuang was stunned. She stopped talking and did not continue to argue with him. She seemed to understand the attitude of the other party. She also did not want to stir up trouble. Beigong Ao gave the other party an intense gaze. However, he also did not cause a scene. He had followed Yi Futian here. He naturally would not cause trouble for Yi Futian. "Seniors, it is but a different understanding of the way, and a difference in opinions. Why must we get so worked up over it?" Lin Yuan could not help but say when he saw the atmosphere turn somewhat awkward. The other party swept a glance at him. With just a glance, he seemed to penetrate Lin Yuan's eyes, causing Lin Yuan to feel as though a terrifying power had descended upon him. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1992. Startled Awakening. Chapter 1992. Startled Awakening. Yi Futian was in front of Lin Yuan, and he, too, felt an invisible force. He turned his head to glance at Lin Yuan, and saw that Lin Yuan was soaking wet. There was a look of pain on his face. Obviously, someone was exerting great pressure on him. Lin Yuan's realm was too far below Renhuang, and spiritual coercion, released by a powerful Renhuang, was enough to crush his spirit. Because of something he said, the other party had actually released the coercion of the Great Path on Lin Yuan. Yi Futian frowned and turned back to look at the other man. However, the man had already withdrawn his breath. With a small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He glanced at Lin Yuan, and that small smile seemed to be mocking them, or rather, expressing his deep disdain. Although Lin Yuan was angry when he saw the look in the other man's eyes, he remained silent. Indeed, his realm, in the eyes of the other man, was as insignificant as that of an insect. What right did he have to dialogue with him? That scornful look was the response to him. In reality, Lin Yuan had not said anything other than asking the other party not to take different views too seriously, nothing more. Seeing the other man turned around, Yi Futian was a little displeased. He could see that Beigong Shuang did not mean to provoke anyone intentionally. It was just her personality, perhaps because the other side had expressed their own analysis first. So when Beigong Shuang disagreed, it was regarded as critical or bellicose. Anyone with the cultivation of Renhuang realm should be a lot more tolerant than this. Perhaps there were other reasons. Yi Futian saw the goddess-like cultivator next to him. Perhaps it was because of her. He could tell that this young man wanted to get close to the woman. You are both right. These patterns and marks were carved impromptu by Thunder punishing Sky Lord. Each mark on the pattern was independent of each other without any connections. Yi Futian suddenly said to Beigong Shuang and Lin Yuan. "Elder." Lin Yuan looked at Yi Futian. At the sage level, his cultivation was not weak, depending on with whom he was compared. He had a feeling that Yi Futian deliberately said what he said, because he was displeased with the other fellow's attitude. The other man's attitude was clearly enough. He was unhappy with their opposing view. So what happened just now was a warning. If Beigong Shuang was not in a confrontational mood before, then Yi Futian's comment at this moment was definitely intentional and could start a dispute. Although Lin Yuan was angry, he didn't want there to be an argument that both parties were no ordinary folks. He could see that Yi Futian and the other man were unusual characters from their extraordinary temperaments and realms. It would not be worth it if they got involved in some conflicts because of him. In the world of cultivation, many disputes were caused by minuscule matters, and these unimportant matters were not worth the price. Lin Yuan didn't want to see that happening here. Yi Futian's words stunned the young man who had already turned around, and he slowly turned back around again. His eyes landed squarely on Yi Futian. However, Yi Futian did not pay any attention to him. Instead, he said to Lin Yuan, "I will take you to go with me to Turtle Deity Island." Lin Yuan wasn't overjoyed when he heard what Yi Futian said. He was actually a little worried about him. After all, the other person was from a principality that even thunder-punishing Skylord would have to reckon with, which only demonstrated the extent of their power. Yi Futian's attitude worried him a little. This kind of talk could easily intensify conflicts, and this trivial matter may become a fuse. Elder. Ling Yuan wanted to say something but didn't know quite how to say it. Then it's decided. Yi Futian smiled and cut off whatever it was that Lin Yuan wanted to say. I have already said that she was wrong. At this moment the young man spoke. Looking at Yi Futian, his eyes were sharp. Yi Futian turned his attention on the man. Things that happened before were just a small mat. Like Lin Yuan stated, different perceptions yielded different opinions, and each was entitled to their own opinions. That was all, and they need not interfere with one another. However, if the other insisted that they were in the wrong when Beigong Shuang had already made a concession, did the other party mistake their courtesy as weakness? She's right. Yi Futian stared into the other person's eyes and responded without fear. If they wanted to fight, he would gladly oblige. If Beigong Shuang was not qualified to be in discussion with him, was he qualified himself? Based on what? The other questioned. I think she is right, so she is right. What other reason do you need? Yi Futian's voice was indifferent. His own opinions didn't need to have a reason. The man suddenly smiled a little sarcastically. So, you think you understood the secret of the cliff? He sneered. And you think you have? Yi Futian retorted. No. The other responded readily. Since no one understands it to prove me wrong, then I am still right in what I think. Unless you can comprehend a set of axe techniques from it, what else can you use to question the opinions of others? Yi Futian asked, still refuting the other's view. The will of the great path pervaded from the other man, as he smiled at Yi Futian and said, Where are you from? And from which principality? Does this have anything to do with cultivating on the cliff? Yi Futian replied with a question instead. The man stared at Yi Futian and said, No, it does not. If not, then why did you ask? Yi Futian replied, just like how the other man had responded to Beigong Shuang and Lin Yuan before, with an unrelenting tone that was aggressive in nature. The coercion of the great path started to permeate from the other man, but his eyes always stayed on Yi Futian. What they said isn't unreasonable. These marks may have nothing to do with each other. Before this is confirmed, it is better not to make rash conclusions. At this moment, the woman in front of them, who was looking at the cliff, spoke softly, startling the young man. Then he moved his sight away from Yi Futian back to the woman who spoke and said with a smile, That makes sense. These were the same words spoken by a different person, and his attitude seemed completely different. Any definite conclusion is unreasonable in itself, unless you already understood the secret of the cliff. Rather than arguing about it, it is better to confirm it in cultivation, the woman continued, as she turned her head to glance at Yi Futian. Yi Futian met her eyes. As an empress, this woman possessed a noble temperament. Her calm and beautiful eyes revealed a touch of confidence and pride. But Yi Futian merely smiled. Is something funny? The woman asked. No, Yi Futian responded. It's just that I am not wrong. At least today, I am not wrong. He may not be right, but he was definitely not wrong, because even he could not make these connections and comprehend it. So none of the others could do it either. Since they couldn't do it, it could not be proven, so naturally, he couldn't be wrong. The woman took a serious look at him, and it was unclear if she really understood the meaning of Yi Futian's words. She turned her eyes back at the cliff, and continued to comprehend in earnest. After she spoke, that young Ren Huang also quieted down. Just like her, he was quietly comprehending, wanting to prove something and confirm that he was right after all. Since the other man did not persist, clearly Yi Futian would not deliberately antagonize him. Likewise, he looked at the cliff once again. Although he supported Beigong Shuang before, the truth was that he couldn't decide either. Bei Shuang's analysis had a certain logic with which he agreed, but the other man's words were not entirely unfounded. Thunder-punishing Skylord had gone to the other man's residence, so he knew something about this. Judging from the previous conversation from the other man, in conjunction with certain rumors about Thunder-punishing Skylord, it was highly probable that treasures were hidden inside the cliff. So what kind of connection was hidden within? When his thought turned to this, Yi Futian quieted down to comprehend. After a while he closed his eyes and was immersed in comprehension once more. Inside his life palace, patterns appeared again, and he seemed to be observing the former thunder-punishing Skylord engrave the way. This time he watched for a long time. Those axe techniques were like beams of light that kept echoing in his mind. But still, they were the same as before, each independent of the other. Though they could be linked to each other, it seemed forced and unnatural. After a long while, the axe techniques in Yi Futian's mind continued to appear, like pictures jumping back and forth. Each technique was very powerful in itself, but still, he could find no connection between them. What was the mystery of this cliff? He opened his eyes and saw Bei Shuang walking in front of the cliff, observing the cliff at close range. Sometimes she even reached out to touch it. "How come you are so serious?" Yi Futian asked her. "Strange," Bei Shuang murmured while turned to walk back next to Yi Futian. As if she was thinking, she raised her head to look at Yi Futian and asked, "Why are those marks without will of the way hidden in them? Seem to be deeper than those axe marks that contained will of the way, and their artistic conception was stronger also." Yi Futian suddenly raised his head to look at the cliff, and the countless marks on the cliff were imprinted into his mind in a flash. They now appeared inside his mind. In his mind, a flash of lightning sailed across, as if he had caught something in the depth of his memory, and there was a touch of excitement in his eyes. Yes, the axe marks that didn't contain will of the way were deeper than those that contained will of the way. What did this mean? He thought of the rumors about thunder-punishing Skylord, which emperor she had him engrave the way for decades. Eventually, he was enlightened and transcended. How did he do it? When Yi Futian looked up at the pattern again, his mentality was quite different. He was very certain that this engraved pattern, and each mark on it existed separately, and they had no relationship with each other. His random guess turned out to be correct. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1993. Decoded. Chapter 1993. Decoded. Return to innocence. Yi Futian said to himself as he looked at the cliff. This was the transcendence of the way, and he was the representation of the way. Thunder-punishing Skylord had engraved the way for decades before he took that step and transformed. Yi Futian had come into contact with many impressive top figures in the past, which was why he could more or less perceive the realm of thunder-punishing Skylord. The engravings that he carved on the cliff were not a complete set of axe techniques, but was a record of the transformation of his realm, the process of his transcendence. "Shuang, you were right," Yi Futian said. Back then, when the thunder-punishing Skylord enlightened the way and beyond, everything that was engraved here denoted his process of enlightenment. Although not meant to be a complete set of axe techniques, each technique was independent of the other. Therefore, after his enlightenment, thunder-punishing Skylord no longer needed the treasure. Even top-level divine item no longer meant anything to him. Bei Shuang regarded him with her beautiful eyes and asked, "Did you comprehend it? This dude, did he get it again?" Her impression of Yi Futian was that he had a great ability to comprehend. It seemed as if there was nothing that he couldn't understand. "Not yet, but I already know the key to it. It was you who inspired me," Yi Futian said with a smile. His words attracted the attention of many, and while they all looked surprised, they were skeptical. Did he get it? But why was it that they didn't quite believe it? In front, the young man from the previous encounter frowned, but before he could speak, the woman next to him turned around to look at Yi Futian. She asked, "What did you comprehend?" Actually, this woman had similar thoughts as Yi Futian and Bei Shuang. The more she steeped herself in it, the stronger her conviction became. Everything on the cliff was independent with no relation to one another. The young man next to her might have had it all wrong. However, she didn't say anything, just allowing the possibility that someone else could find the answer. The reason she turned around and asked him was because Yi Futian had declared that he knew the key to it all. I comprehended the mentality of Thunder punishing Skylord when he was cultivating here, said Yi Futian. Is that so? The young man glanced at him coldly and said, I would like to see that with my own eyes. Yi Futian smiled and said nothing. He continued to look at the cliff wall, starting from the first mark on the pattern, and comprehending from the beginning. This mark seemed to have been imprinted extremely clearly in his mind. In that case, watch closely, Yi Futian said. And a very bright divine light from his eyes directly shined upon the mark on the cliff. In that instant, there seemed to be an elusive figure that landed inside the mark, and turned into an avatar of Yi Futian. The avatar moved as the mark also moved. It was as if it was now alive. Buzz! A brilliant glow burst out, and from the cliff, a small figure seemed to appear, as if the thunder-punishing Skylord himself had returned, waving an axe. Everyone could feel its power and speed, which forced many in front of the cliff to step back as if they were frightened. But after they had retreated, they found that there was no real damage. The illusion was not real, but it was real enough to trick them into believing that it was. Those around all turned their heads to look at Yi Futian with quite a shock. No one had been able to do the same as he had just done, urging the mark to release itself to the outside world, so that all may perceive it. Could it be that he had truly comprehended it? The woman also had a look of surprise on her face, as she gave Yi Futian a serious assessing look. The young man next to her had a terrible look on his face. Yi Futian did show him clearly what he could accomplish. If Yi Futian had really done it, then it would be a slap in the face for him. Previously, he was extremely high-handed when he announced that Beigong Shuang was flat-out wrong, and that she was not worthy of arguing with him. After that, Yi Futian intervened. If Yi Futian confirmed that he was wrong today, then his shame would be unimaginable. It was just that apart from believing in his own judgment, he didn't think that Yi Futian could solve the secret of the cliff. Like Yi Futian, he believed that if he couldn't solve the riddle, then no one else could either, and that no one else would be able to decode this mystery. Because of this self-confidence, he had left himself no room for doubts. But it seemed that he was wrong after all. The other man was far more powerful than he initially thought. Yi Futian didn't care about their looks, nor did he pay any attention to these people. He concentrated on the front, and soon, the light of the second mark lit up. This sight made Beigong Ao and Beigong Shuang feel as if they were back on Eastern Deity Island. It was the same as before. Only he and he alone could unlock the relic left by those figures of the past. Was there any relic that could baffle him? Beigong Shuang and Beigong Ao couldn't help but ask themselves, this guy is a relic terminator. It's like there's nothing he can't decode. As the rays of light lit up, the brilliance released by the pattern on the cliff wall became stronger. Many people saw many phantom shadows dancing, waving their battle axes, and a terrifying conception bloomed from them. The cultivators around it had all felt the conception, and didn't want to miss such an opportunity. Looks like he was right, the woman murmured. The marks on the cliff lit up. Everyone could clearly feel the conception. They felt those marks as when thunder-punishing Skylord had engraved them there in the days of yore, swinging his battle axe at his pleasure. There was no connection between each mark, and they did not converge into a set of axe techniques. This meant that Yi Futian was right. The young man next to her became even more embarrassed when he heard her words. An elder behind him said, or these chaotic axe techniques are a system themselves. They could be considered a complete set of axe techniques. Although this was not completely unreasonable, it did seem a bit far-fetched, all to save face for the young man. The woman understood it quite well, so she only nodded gently and said, perhaps it is so. As they were talking, brilliant bright lights shot out from the cliff wall, and a rumbling sound accompanied with it. As the light spread from the pattern toward the cliff wall next to this one, more and more marks lit up. Gradually, the cliffs in front of the coast were trembling violently. As the light of those marks started to make cracks on the cliffs, and each crack seemed to have been split by a battle axe. With the strength of the thunder-punishing Skylord back then, these cliffs could not have borne the way he engraved here. Perhaps they were already full of fissures and cracks, sealed with the great path by the thunder-punishing Skylord. Maybe these marks were the key to unlock the mystery. This was probably why no one had been able to break it by force all these years. It's about to break, Minnie whispered as the bright light burst out, stinging their eyes. Those cracks tore open the cliff wall, and in an instant, everything in front of them disappeared and turned into dust. Those who beheld the sight were quite emotional inside. After so many years, someone had actually decoded it. This too confirmed what Futian had said. He was right. On the contrary, it was the young man who was wrong. He had claimed that thunder-punishing Skylord had once been a guest at his house. But previously, he was so insistent that Beigong Shuang was wrong. Thinking about it now, his display of aggression before seemed rather ironic. Many people glanced at the young man, and he clearly felt these gazes. As a top-notch genius Ren Huang, he felt embarrassed at this moment. His face was hot, and he did not speak, nor did he look at the others. Grimly he kept his eyes forward. A horrific thunder field appeared in the space that was destroyed. In that field, there was a thunder divine orb floating in the air. It was like an eye that was swallowing up the terrifying thunder power between heaven and earth. One after another, the thundering lightning surrounded it and integrated with it. All the cultivators stood there still, as if they dared not act rashly. This must be the treasure left by thunder-punishing Skylord. The thunder-punishing Skylord left the cliff here long ago. Not only did he not destroy it, but also he sealed a treasure here, clearly for the one who could decode the secret of the cliff. The elder did it, and the treasure should belong to him. At this time, a voice was heard, directing everyone's attention to the speaker. It was Lin Yuan. His remarks clearly implied that the treasure should go to Futian. No one else said anything. There were not many who could compete with Futian and his people. No one knew whether the group that argued with Futian would try to compete for this treasure. But the woman next to the young man glanced at him and said, "Let's go." Obviously, they had no intention to fight for it. From their perspective, this treasure was not that precious. Since it was Futian who decoded it, there was no need to fight. The other party must have come from a supreme principality. Very well. The young man nodded. It was obvious that he had lost this time. He turned his head to look at Futian. He smiled and said, "See you on Turtle Deity Island." Once he finished speaking, his group of people broke through the void and left. Futian glanced at the man who was leaving, then looked at that treasure, and said to Beigong Shuang, who was next to him, "Last time, the cloudwood was taken by your father. This time this treasure belongs to you." "Me?" Beigong Shuang looked at Futian. "I have no shortage of treasures of this kind," said Futian with a smile. Beigong Shuang looked at him, and then at her father, who nodded slightly at her. He said, "You may accept it." Beigong Shuang walked forward, and did not refuse. Those who were next to them were confounded. A treasure of this level was given away just like that. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1994. Turtle Deity Island. Chapter 1994. Turtle Deity Island. Small boats were floating in the divine ocean, seemed to drift with the currents. From time to time, they would sail past one island city or another. The occupants of these small boats were Futian and the others. At this moment, Lin Yuan took out a map and looked into the distance, saying, "We are almost there. The next island city is Turtle Deity Island." On the small boat ahead, Futian nodded. In the past few days, they did not rush their journey, but took their time to enjoy the scenery along the way, traveling at a comfortable speed. If there were tribulations to be overcome by Emperor Shi, they would have sped up their process. However, in the past few days, they had seen no sign of tribulations, so they moved along in a nice and leisurely manner. On the other boat there were two people. Beigong Ao was guiding the boat forward, and in front of him, Beigong Shuang was cultivating with her eyes closed. Faintly, there were terrifying thunder intent permeating from her body as the power of thunder covered her. Beigong Ao controlled the fluctuation of the aftershock so that she could cultivate in peace. That day, after Yi Futian had given the treasure to her, Beigong Shuang took it inside her body and began to cultivate and refine it. On the way here, she had been in the process of refining and cultivating. Before we get to Turtle Deity Island, I wonder if Shuang would finish cultivating, Yi Futian said with a smile. Let's wait and see. If not, I will stay with her in the Divine Ocean, said Beigong Ao. Although the chance of watching the three tribulations was a rare event, self-cultivation was equally important. This was an opportunity bestowed on Beigong Shuang, and it had the possibility to help her break through the realm. Before she finished cultivating, Beigong Ao would not interrupt her prematurely. As the small boats moved forward, the thunder intent on Beigong Shuang was getting stronger. Above the Divine Ocean, a thunderstorm suddenly manifested in the endless clear sky, rushing toward Beigong Shuang. Traces of lightning fell from the sky and descended on her. Beigong Ao looked up, but did not attempt to stop the phenomenon. To Yi Futian, that treasure was nothing, so he gave it to Beigong Shuang instead. But Beigong Ao knew very well that without Yi Futian's involvement, they would never have been unable to obtain anything close to it in their lifetimes. It was just like the last time when he got the cloud wood in Eastern Deity Island. Ahead, Yi Futian on the small boat glanced in Beigong Shuang's direction. With a bright smile on his face, he asked, "Almost breaking through?" "Should be." Beigong Ao nodded. She saw that thunder's power in the void became increasingly stronger, causing restlessness in this part of the Divine Ocean. Waves continued to rise, turning into a terrifying thunder field. How terrifying! For Run Huang to break through the realm, it's almost like a catastrophe of the Great Path, Lin Yuan mumbled to himself. As someone in the sage realm, he was a powerful enough existence among ordinary folks. In the Divine Ocean continent, his level was just above average. But compared to Run Huang, Sage Realm was obviously not even close, much like a child in the eyes of giants. Just the power of a Run Huang breaking through the realm was enough to instill fear in a sage cultivator like him. One day, when you reach such a realm, you will experience it, sooner or later. Yi Futian smiled at Lin Yuan. It was a journey that he had been through himself from noble to sage, then transcended as a saint to proving as Ren Huang. Every step of the way he, too, had looked up to those who were before him. But as time went on, he had traveled higher and higher, until he far surpassed countless cultivators to whom he had once looked up. "It seems too far away just now," Lin Yuan said with a smile, but it was the truth. For the realm of the sage, Ren Huang was far too far away. If the breakthrough of the lower Ren Huang realm is so terrifying, what would it be like when Emperor Shi experienced the divine tribulation? Lin Yuan murmured again. This was something that exceeded the limits of his imagination. It can't be compared at all. Yi Futian smiled and said, "If Emperor Shi were to experience the tribulation, perhaps the entire Divine Ocean continent would tremble." There are really two significant tribulations in cultivation. One was the transcendence into sainthood, and the other was to go through the three tribulations and transform. All other times were breaking through the realm. Transcendence into sainthood was enough to cause natural phenomenons, such as the light of catastrophe. Therefore, the divine tribulation would be unimaginable. According to his understanding of breaking through the realms, divine tribulation was not something tolerated by the rules of the Great Path, as he knew of them. It was probably an earth-shaking affair. It was something that he couldn't possibly imagine based on what he knew at the moment. At this moment, Beigong Shuang opened her eyes, and the light of thunder in the sky poured madly into her body until her eyes seemed to also contain the terrible light of thunder. When she looked up to the sky above, 2 lightning bolts actually beamed out from her eyes. In a flash, Beigong Shuang's body shot up into the sky, bathing in the thunder and lightning as the Great Path integrated into her body, and her entire person turned into a vessel of the Great Path, madly swallowing and absorbing the power of the thunder. This breakthrough had induced a good amount of power from the Great Path, Yi Futian commented. Beigong Ao nodded in agreement, somewhat surprised. It seemed that his daughter would make great progress this time. That treasure definitely had a beneficial effect on her, Beigong said. All the small boats stopped, and everyone was watching quietly. After a long while, the light of thunder in the sky dissipated, and Beigong Shuang floated back down and returned to the small boat. She regarded Yi Futian with her beautiful eyes and blinked, which got a chuckle out of Yi Futian. "Continue forward," said Yi Futian. As his voice fell, all the boats accelerated forward. "Let's go." Beigong echoed the command. Suddenly the group accelerated forward. Behind them, Goddess Donglai watched all this quietly. There was even more admiration in those eyes that looked toward Yi Futian. No one knew how such a person had come to appear in the original realm. There were bound to be other powerful characters who would inevitably aggregate around him. He seemed to possess a natural quality that would make people follow him willingly. Someone like him, if achieving all his potential, the result must be astounding. No one knew how far Yi Futian could go in the future, but she would gladly wait and see. There were many rumors regarding Turtle Deity Island on the Divine Ocean continent. Some people said that Turtle Deity Island really had a turtle deity, while others claimed that this gigantic island was, in fact, the back of a black turtle. However, most people seemed to think that Turtle Deity Island was so named because the island itself resembled Xuanwu, the black turtle. No matter what these rumors were, Turtle Deity Island was truly famous because of one cultivator, Emperor Shi. Not just Turtle Deity Island, but the entire Divine Ocean continent was known because of Emperor Shi, a top-notch existence enough to make an entire continent known to everyone. As they approached Turtle Deity Island, they could see those who were traveling in the void from time to time. Yi Futian and the others traveled in the sea as those in the air passed them by. Sometimes the aura in the void was extremely powerful, even a little alarming, and sometimes sounds of chatting and laughter could be heard. They could already see land in front of them. It was Turtle Deity Island. "It's right in front." Ling Yuan was a little emotional. This time, following Yi Futian, he had the opportunity to see Emperor Shi face the tribulations up close and personal. How could he not be excited? Around Turtle Deity Island, there were many scattered islands. As they approached, they found that there were crowds everywhere. "What's going on?" Yi Futian looked concerned as he swept his divine consciousness over the crowd, and found that countless cultivators were outside of Turtle Deity Island, and did not set foot on the island. Voices came into his ears, and Yi Futian suddenly understood. He said in a low voice, "It seems that Turtle Deity Island is getting too crowded now, and they have begun to control those who entered. This is expected. Although Turtle Deity Island is extensive, it is only an island, and the number of people that can be accommodated is limited." However, this time, the entire Donghua domain was alarmed. With so many cultivators arriving, if all of them were to enter the island, Turtle Deity Island will be overcrowded, Goddess Donglai said from behind. Yi Futian nodded as they continued to move forward, and came to the area where the crowd was being blocked out. An incredibly astonishing aura of the Great Path was in front of them, and formed a heaviness that was difficult for them to continue pushing forward. The airspace was shut out too. Yi Futian raised his head and glanced at the space above them. Those cultivators, who were traveling through the air, were also stopped. It seemed as if blocked by an invisible force. Afterward, they were drifted down and landed on the ground. Yi Futian and the others looked at the sea, and saw a giant black turtle, but not just one. In this area of the ocean, there were many black turtles on the periphery of Turtle Deity Island. "Sir, how can we enter the island?" Yi Futian asked the person next to him. A few days ago, there was news from Turtle Deity Island that only those in the Upper Runhuang realm may enter the island. The others, unless led by a top figure, then they may enter together, the man responded. Yi Futian nodded and stepped forward, saying, "Turtle Elder, we came from Dongxiao continent and hoped that we might be an exception." The black turtle glanced at him with some contempt in his eyes, then dived into the water. Yi Futian walked forward, facing that massive resistance of the Great Path, and continued. Seeing this forced entry, that black turtle of the Upper Runhuang realm raised his head to give him a look as a terrifying wave slapped toward him. Yi Futian waved his hand toward the void, like the light from an axe slashing down, and split the waves apart. He moved like an invasive stream of light, and rushed directly toward the black turtle. Boom! The giant waves soared as the black turtle rushed toward Yi Futian through the water. A hefty pressure landed on Yi Futian. Yi Futian didn't bother to avoid it. Both of his palms pushed forward, and a terrifying force slapped down and suppressed it, like a monument of the great path. A dull thud was heard in the void, and that massive black turtle was knocked back into the sea. Yi Futian's figure flashed. He landed squarely on the turtle's back, saying, "Elder, please make an exception for us. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1995, Viciousness. Chapter 1995, Viciousness be *starred. Black Turtle roared. The tall waves that seemed to reach into the heavens flooded the entire region. The terrifying waves surrounded Yi Futian and morphed into the form of a divine turtle. It contained an icy aura of the great path. Ice sealed the entire space. The people from a distance looked on and saw that the battlefield in front of them was sealed by ice, and that Yi Futian was buried within. This guy, he is only a middle-level Renhuang. Yet he dared to face off a level 7 demon emperor. Everyone felt a ripple course through their hearts. However, that person had great combat abilities. A casual slap from his palm could suppress an entire region, and Black Turtle was knocked back by the impact. However, at that moment, the towering Black Turtle halo sealed the entire area with ice. It seemed like Yi Futian would be frozen to death. Yi Futian was at the center of the area sealed by ice, and his entire person seemed to have turned into an ice sculpture. The extremely cold will of the great path seeped into his body, seemingly wanting to seal his organs and vessels with ice and freeze his life itself. Yet at that moment, a terrifying divine flame of the great path burned and radiated outward from Yi Futian. Seeping into the ice sculpture, the flames blazed brightly, melting the ice sculpture, and even dyed it red. In a short while, the huge halo of the black turtle turned scarlet, burning in the divine ocean. Many, who watched the scene unfold before them, felt a tremor course through their heart. The black turtle let out a low roar, and his entire head shrunk back into his shell as he said, "You may enter. I still have some friends." Yi Futian pointed at the row of people in front. The black turtle stretched his head out and glanced at them. He discovered that among them were some with shallow cultivation levels. He had to say, "Your combat abilities are high enough, so you can be an exception to the rule. However, you can't go overboard with it. This is the rule of the Turtle Deity Island. Just now, I was too careless with the extent of my attacks. I hope Senior will forgive me. Although this elixir is not especially valuable, it can strengthen your life force. Please accept them as my apology." Yi Futian retrieved an elixir, and instantly, a strong elixir fragrance washed over everyone. The black turtle's eyes glimmered, and his neck continued stretching outwards. It twisted around to look at the elixir above him. The lives of turtles were extremely long, and their life force was especially strong. These types of elixirs were significant to them. "You have exceptional talent, so I'm sure you are from a top-tier faction. There are also top-tier Renhuangs here with you. Since you are all traveling together, you are all welcome. I'll lead you onto the island," said the black turtle. The people from afar were stunned. "What is this sudden change in attitude?" "Thank you, Senior." Yi Futian opened his hands, and the black turtle swallowed the elixir immediately. Xiaqing Yuan and the rest climbed onto his back. The black turtle turned around and dived into the divine ocean and entered the forbidden space, heading in the direction of Turtle Deity Island. Many practitioners were speechless as they watched the receding silhouettes. How can even demons be this materialistic? Just one elixir was enough to convince him to ignore the rules? How can this be allowed? They all thought. The black turtle carried Yi Futian and his friends forward, and very quickly, they neared Turtle Deity Island. Senior Turtle, many members of top-tier factions have already arrived on Turtle Deity Island already, right? Yi Futian asked. The black turtle nodded. Quite a few have arrived already. Even if they have yet to reach, they should at least be in the Divine Ocean continent. There are only a few days left to Emperor Shi overcoming his tribulations, and no one wants to miss it. You have exceptional strength too, so I'm guessing that you have forged a perfect grade divine wheel, right? Surely you must also hail from an extraordinary faction. Where are you from? I come from the Dongxiao continent, Yi Futian replied. The Dongxiao continent? That should be the Millet Emperor's territory, right? Are you a practitioner from Wangshan Watchtower? The black turtle indeed understood quite a bit. He knew a little about the various top-tier practitioners in the Donghua domain. After all, there weren't many practitioners of such level. I guess I count as one of them, Yi Futian replied. I hear that there is a practitioner in the Wangshan Watchtower named Zhong Chan. Do you know him? The black turtle asked. Senior, you have heard of him as well? Yi Futian asked. I've heard of him from the people who entered the island these past few days. They say that Zhong Chan of the Wangshan Watchtower had already become a high-level Run Huang with a perfect great path. It is said that he has unlimited potential, and it is almost certain that he will become yet another titan of the Donghua domain in the future, the black turtle said. I understand. Thank you, Senior, for your reminder. Yi Futian nodded. The black turtle brought them to the shore of the Turtle Deity Island. The formless pressure of the great path dissipated. Yi Futian no longer felt the pressure. We have arrived, said the black turtle. Thank you for your trouble. Yi Futian nodded and stepped out. The group of them stepped onto the Turtle Deity Island, and the black turtle dived into the sea, heading back from where they came from. Quickly he vanished from their sights. Yi Futian walked around on the island, and like they expected, there were many people on the island. Practitioners of various cultivation levels were all present on the island. In the past, there were no restrictions on who could enter the island. However, at some point in time, there were too many people on the island. It was then that Turtle Deity Island decided to limit the number of practitioners entering the island based on their cultivation level to prevent the island from being overcrowded. Where is Emperor Shi cultivating at? Yi Futian asked Lin Yuan. Turtle Peak, Lin Yuan replied. Even though I have never been here before, you could probably just ask anyone around here. They should all know where it is. Yi Futian nodded. Since they were already on Turtle Deity Island, it was easy to find where Emperor Shi was cultivating. They walked towards the center of Turtle Deity Island. Along the way, they asked around for the location of Turtle Peak. After some time, they arrived at a city at the foot of Turtle Peak. This city was named Turtle Deity City, and it was located at the bottom of Turtle Peak. Arriving in the city, Yi Futian noticed that the practitioners of Turtle Deity City had an obviously high level of cultivation. A vast majority were visitors, and just by casually looking around he could see high-level Renhuangs. Any virtuoso that they met would likely hail from a powerful faction in the Donghua domain. Let's find a place to settle down for a while, the Alchemy Emperor said. Let's wait for Zhong Chan and the rest to meet up with us. Yi Futian nodded. Lin Yuan already knew that Yi Futian and the rest came from Wangshan Watchtower. People like these would naturally not be a typical person, and they certainly belonged to different worlds. I did not expect that we would also have a chance to come to Turtle Deity Island to witness this grand event. Thank you, seniors, for bringing the two of us along. Lin Yuan and his cultivation partner Lu Qing wrapped their fists in gratitude towards Yi Futian. There is no need for thanks. It was not much work anyway, Yi Futian replied casually. Indeed, to him, it was nothing bringing the two of them along. Your help is, however, significant to us. However, I'm afraid we are unable to repay you, and can only be thankful in our hearts. Lin Yuan was very realistic. After all, the difference between them was too huge. Yi Futian was such a powerful character. How could he possibly repay this favor? Yi Futian smiled lightly. He was not really bothered by it. Now that we are already on Turtle Deity Island, the two of us shall not intrude on you seniors. We will take our leave now. Lin Yuan wrapped his fist as he bade farewell. Yi Futian nodded. All right. I hope you will gain something this time. Seniors, take care. The two of them bowed lightly, and turned around to leave. The two of them initially were not familiar with Yi Futian. They only met him on their journey here. Furthermore, they were not even from the same world. Yi Futian was already very magnanimous in bringing them to Turtle Deity Island. Lin Yuan knew not to take advantage of Yi Futian's help too much. He knew that he should not continue staying beside Yi Futian. It would also intrude on them. Yi Futian, on the other hand, did not think about these at all, and he was not really bothered by it. They were indeed not close, so he did not try to get them to stay. After the two parties separated, Lin Yuan and Lu Qing continued walking around Turtle Deity Island. Lin Yuan sighed. Sometimes I think that I have put in sufficient effort into cultivating, but when compared to these people at the pinnacle, I discover that my efforts are nothing. The divine prefecture is so big, so there certainly are many exceptional talents. These people are already standing at the pinnacle, so what is there to compare? We should first maintain our own psyches, persevere in cultivation, surpass mortality, and forge our saint plane. Lu Qing replied quietly. Seeing all these exceptional practitioners has indeed affected my psyche. Let's leave this place quickly, lest we develop overly lofty goals. Lin Yuan lightly nodded. As they were walking, Lin Yuan seemed to have sensed something. He felt that something seemed off and stopped walking. Right after, Lu Qing also sensed it. In the next moment, a powerful sealing power shrouded the entire space, and an elderly man appeared ahead of them. His eyes let out a demon-like aura. It was terrifying. "Senior, how can we help you?" Lin Yuan lightly rapped his fist. He had an intense ominous feeling, but he tried his best to control his fear. Oin! The elderly man morphed into a black beam of light, and instantly appeared in front of them. His hands stretched outwards and tightly grasped both their heads. They couldn't even react. Lin Yuan and Lu Qing's face turned ashen. He let out a frightened expression. A gray silhouette charged into their minds, and a voice broke out. "Who was the man that you were following previously?" "Senior, we were only following him on our way here. We are not close at all," Lin Yuan said. However, an even more terrifying power infiltrated him, and his body trembled violently. Lu Qing even let out a scream of anguish. Lin Yuan could not hope to fight against this power, and he too felt Lu Qing's pain. He pleaded, "I only know that they come from Wuxia watchtower of the Dongxiao continent, please." Bang! The moment he said his words, the elderly man exerted a little force in his palms, and the two of them were instantly pulverized into a gray stream, which then vanished. They were killed in a split second. The elderly man's silhouette flashed, and the sealing power vanished. He also completely disappeared, as though nothing had happened before. However, there were numerous practitioners on the Turtle Deity Island, so there were still people who noticed what had happened. Streaks of silhouette flew over here. As they watched the vanishing silhouette, their hearts beat wildly, especially those with weak cultivation. They felt a tinge of fear. These two practitioners were murdered just like that. Not even their bodies remained. Who did they offend? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1996. Upheaval. Chapter 1996. Upheaval. After Lin Yuan and his partner were killed, a few streaks of silhouettes descended on this area. They looked at each other, their brows furrowed. "Let's go." In a flash they disappeared. In a tavern in Turtle Deity Island, a person sat quietly on the attic floor. Ling He was sipping his wine calmly. Out of nowhere, a person appeared behind him. He was the elderly man who killed Lin Yuan. He stood behind Ling He and telepathically said, "Dongxiao Continent, Wuxia Watchtower." Wuxia Watchtower. A tinge of surprise flashed in Ling He's eyes. A name surfaced in his mind. Zhong Chan. That could not be right. Zhong Chan was rumored to have already broken through to the high-level Renhuang level. That man, however, was only a middle-level Renhuang. He should be another practitioner of Wuxia Watchtower. Indeed, it was exactly like what he had guessed. The man hailed from a very powerful faction of the Donghua domain. However, even if he were from Wuxia Watchtower, he would have to pay the price for spoiling his plans. This time, he had put in a lot of effort to get close to the people from the snow capital. However, it seemed like it was highly likely to fail. Who is that? At that moment, a virtuoso behind Ling He glanced into the distance. There was a divine consciousness spying on them. A strong divine consciousness shrouded the entire space around the tavern. A pressure of the great path hammered down on a certain location, and at that spot, a few people walked in the air. They appeared outside the tavern and stood from afar. One of them announced, "We are from the city lord's office." "Where are you from?" Ling He's eyes narrowed sharply. He glanced at the elderly man behind him with a tinge of coldness in his eyes. The elderly man's expressions changed slightly, and he lowered his head as though he had made a mistake. It was apparent that he did not fully clean up after himself, and his actions had caught some people's attention. Donghua Heaven's Lingxiao Pavilion. Ling He lifted his cup of wine and drank it calmly without looking at the other party. Upon hearing the name Lingxiao Pavilion of the Donghua Heavens, the row of people hesitated for a moment and sighed internally. They could not afford to offend factions of such a high level. Apologies for the disturbance. The few of them wrapped their fists lightly and left the area in a flash, as though they had never appeared before. They did not mention why they came here. It seemed like it was only to ask where the other party was from. Ling He did not find it strange at all. Even if his actions were discovered, it meant nothing to him. The life of 2 ants was worth nothing to him. He wouldn't even think about it. It was just that his reputation would suffer a little if news that he might be using his position to carry out his personal revenge got out. He was a man of status, and so, it would be a little embarrassing if people knew that he used his influence to deal with 2 juniors. Apart from that, the death of the 2 of them was nothing major. "Have the people from the various huge factions arrived?" asked Ling He. The major factions that he mentioned naturally referred to the most powerful factions in the Donghua domain. They were factions that were on the same level as the Lingxiao Pavilion. For example, Wangshan Watchtower. Otherwise, the other factions were meaningless, and there was no need to pay attention to them. "They should more or less have arrived," an elderly man replied. The domain chief's manor had always had someone here, but those coming should still be on their way. Now that the people from the Wangshan Watchtower had arrived, we only haven't heard from the Nanhua continent and Badlands continent. All the other factions already have representatives here. The youth nodded. "Investigate if there are any new powerful middle-level Run Huang in the Wangshan Watchtower." "Yes, sir." Someone accepted the order. The factions in Turtle Deity Island were rather jumbled at the moment. Virtuosos from various places were all here. Scouting would not only be simple but rather, it would be made even easier. Because people from various places were all gathered in one place, information could be exchanged easily. Ling He looked far into the distance, his eyes carrying a tinge of coldness. Regardless of how powerful anyone was, if anyone dared to disrupt his plans, they must pay for it. Futian had not received news of Lin Yuan's death. Whatever happened at the Divine Ocean Cliff was mainly due to his conflict with the other party. In any case, it was not a big matter anyway, so there wasn't a deep grudge formed. He did not expect that this encounter would cause him to be a target of assassination. Certainly, he would not expect that to lead to the death of Lin Yuan and his partner. If he knew, he would not have let Lin Yuan leave him. While they were walking around Turtle Deity Island, a row of silhouettes suddenly flashed towards them and descended. Seeing who had arrived, Futian smiled and said, "Brothers, you have finally arrived." The people who arrived were the practitioners of Wangshan Watchtower. Li Chongxing and Zong Chong were all among them. "Your brother Zong and I had arrived some time ago, and met up in advance. We were nearby when we saw you arrive," Li Chongxing smiled and said. Even though he was a powerful level 9 existence, one could not feel a tinge of threatening aura. Of course, this was only one of his side. He was like this only to his fellow brothers. "I wonder how long more we have to wait," Futian said. "There's no need to rush. This time, many powerful figures have arrived. It has been many years since virtuosos from various places have gathered in one place in the Donghua domain. It is quite a fortunate coincidence this time, Li Chongqing said with a smile. Among the powerful characters who have come this time, there might be those who are not necessarily weaker than you. It's a pity that you don't have the chance to spar with them. It seems that brother really wants to spectate a battle of the path between disciples of top-tier factions. Zhongchan smiled. Nope. I am only interested in the battle of the path between practitioners of little brother Ye's level, or influential characters like little brother Zong. Li Chongqing smiled. This time, I'm afraid that among the powerful people who have come this time, a number would want to know if you live up to your reputation. I might be able to spectate some interesting events. Zhongchan shook his head silently. The greater one's fame, the more easily one is targeted by others. It was exactly because he had risen to a high-level Run Huang that he had been targeted by various top-tier factions. Boom! Just as they were talking, a low rumble reverberated continuously throughout the space. When they lifted their heads towards the heavens and saw that dark clouds shrouded the blue sky, the black clouds floated about, and the skies gradually darkened. Something big is going to happen. Li Chongqing's eyes glowed in anticipation, and he stared at the skies above. The clouds that floated about gave off a tinge of pressure. At the same moment, in various places on Turtle Deity Island, many people raised their heads to look at the skies. They all felt the faint pressurizing aura. They could feel that something big was going to happen. The weather is changing so quickly, and these phenomena are happening. Does this mean that the tribulations are coming? Yi Futian muttered softly. I've not witnessed it before either. However, from the ancient records, the geographical phenomena caused by the great path tribulations of gods require time to happen. This scene now probably indicates that the tribulations will happen soon. Li Chongqing replied with his head raised towards the skies. At the same time, many people flew out from the city towards the same destination, Turtle Peak. We should also set off towards Turtle Peak, Li Chongqing continued. Instantly they also shot into the skies. At that moment, they noticed that the entire population of Turtle Deity Island was making their move, and they were all headed towards Turtle Peak. Turtle Peak was the cultivation court of Emperor Shi. All the virtuosos would descend from the skies right before arriving at Turtle Peak, and then walk up to the peak. Everyone was conscious not to enter the peak from above. Without sufficient strength, their action would be an act of provocation. Everyone has arrived, Yi Futian thought to himself. They also arrived at the foot of the Turtle Peak, and began walking up Turtle Peak. He was not the only one. Virtuosos from all over the world were rushing to ascend the peak. Wisps of aura of the Great Path exploded out one after another, as everyone began using their own unique skills. At that moment, the area looked very beautiful. Who are those people? At that moment, many people looked in a certain direction. At that location was a row of goddess-like figures. They were dressed in white and surrounded by a cold aura. Even the temperature around them dropped a few degrees. No one dared to get close to them. Goddesses of the northern white snow capital, someone said. The land of fluttering snow? Someone asked in surprise. Yes, someone replied. Instantly the people around them retreated in fear of getting too close to them. Even though the ladies were gorgeous, no one dared to go up and flirt with them. Yi Futian also looked in that direction. The other virtuosos all kept their distance, and did not dare appear in their vicinity. It seemed that these ladies were rather intimidating. Yi Futian spotted a familiar silhouette among them. It was the goddess-like figure that he saw that day at the cliff. Northern White Snow Capital? Yi Futian muttered. Are they practitioners from the divine palace of fluttering snow of the northern white continent? It was one of the 7 main continents of the Donghua domain. So naturally, Yi Futian looked up information regarding the place. In the northern white continent, the divine palace of fluttering snow was located in the snow capital. It was the top sacred grounds of northern white. Certainly, it was especially powerful. In that case, that lady must come from the snow capital's divine palace of fluttering snow. Are you interested? Li Chongqing smiled at Yi Futian. While the practitioners of the divine palace of fluttering snow are a little fierce, they are all stunning. Yi Futian smiled and shook his head. Of course, he knew that Li Chongqing was joking. However, everyone seemed to be a little wary of the goddesses of the divine palace of fluttering snow. Was it because of their cultivation? They continued walking up, and in no time at all, many practitioners had ascended Turtle Peak. The aura in the skies became even more pressurizing. It was like the pressure of the Great Path's aura. With great phenomena appearing in the skies, something big was bound to happen. The tribulations were going to arrive. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1997. Virtuosos from all over the world. Chapter 1997. Virtuosos from all over the world. Turtle Peak was very spacious. It was the cultivation grounds of Emperor Shi. No one dared to disturb Emperor Shi when they ascended the peak. They only stood at the outer regions of the Turtle Peak. When Yi Futian and his group stepped onto Turtle Peak, they gazed into the distance. There were a few structures that were not quite majestic and seemed to be casually arranged in that direction. However, they seemed to carry an ethereal air of deities. It was as though they were in the realm of deities. It was exactly where Emperor Shi was at. Many virtuosos had scaled the Turtle Peak. In this vast group of people, many had an extremely high level of cultivation. High-level renhuangs could be found everywhere on the peak. At that time, Yi Futian felt that someone was looking at him. He turned and looked around. He saw someone familiar. He met this practitioner when he was training on the Eastern Deity Island, Jiang Jiuming from the Jiang clan ancient royal family. The Jiang clan ancient royal family was an extremely old clan. It was the protector of the Luotian continent, which was one of the 7 continents. The clan was crowded with virtuosos, and Jiang Jiuming was one of the top practitioners in his generation. Since the Luotian continent and the Penglai continent were both in the east of the Donghua domain, they were quite close. When Jiang Jiuming went to train on the Eastern Deity Island the last time, he was also there to see if he could obtain elixirs from the Eastern Deity Island. Unfortunately, he failed. However, on Eastern Deity Island, he encountered an extremely exceptional practitioner, Yi Futian. At that moment, Jiang Jiuming walked towards Yi Futian. Behind him were a couple of practitioners from the Jiang clan ancient royal family. He stopped in front of Yi Futian and said, "Such a coincidence. I did not expect to meet Brother Yi and the Island Lord again." The Island Lord, of course, referred to the Donglai goddess. It's a coincidence indeed. Yi Futian smiled. After learning about the Donghua domain, he understood that the Jiang clan ancient royal family was the strongest clan in the Luotian continent. They were mysterious and ancient, and they had an abundance of resources. This is also somewhat expected. With such great talent, Brother Yi naturally would emerge from the Penglai continent. I guess it isn't strange that you have appeared here as well, Jiang Jiuming smiled. Looking at the Zongchan, Li Changsheng, and the rest who were standing beside Yi Futian, he said, "I am Jiang Jiuming from the Jiang clan. You are all practitioners from the Wangshan Watchtower, right?" Just now, he had roughly analyzed Yi Futian's group and walked over after identifying Zongchan and the others. Not long ago, he heard news that the great Yan ancient royal family had headed towards the Wangshan Watchtower, and that Yi Futian had already started cultivating in the Wangshan Watchtower. The Jiang clan ancient royal family, Li Changxing and Zongchan, and the rest instantly understood where the other party hailed from. They nodded, smiling. I did not expect Island Lord and Brother Yi to have gone to Wangshan Watchtower. Now Brother Yi is cultivating in Wangshan Watchtower. To be able to get the Millet Emperor's guidance, it can be said that you have found yourself a famous teacher, Jiang Jiuming said. At that time, he thought that it would be a waste of his talents if Yi Futian continued to stay on Eastern Deity Island. However, unexpectedly, the Donglai goddess sent Yi Futian to Wangshan Watchtower. This led him to believe that something important happened when Yi Futian entered the secret zone of the Eastern Deity Island. I am only studying at Wangshan Watchtower. I have not become the Millet Emperor's disciple, Yi Futian explained with a smile. Did everyone believe that the Millet Emperor had taken him in as a disciple? Jiang Jiuming smiled without saying anything. From his perspective, there was not much difference. Are you Zongchan? asked a lady standing beside Jiang Juming as she looked at Zhong Chan. She was Jiang Qixian, and was also a Renhuang practitioner of the Jiang clan ancient royal family. She was dashing, and carried a majestic air about her. Her gorgeous eyes were focused on Zhong Chan. The outer world, including the seniors of the Jiang clan royal ancient family, had high praise for Zhong Chan. Zhong Chan nodded. I hear from my seniors that you have already attained 7 perfect levels of the Great Path? Jiang Qixian asked without any hesitation. Zhong Chan nodded. Quite a number of the virtuosos of the Jiang clan ancient royal family looked at him. 7 perfect levels of the Great Path. Just how strong was his combat ability? It was likely that he was strong enough to compete with typical level 9 Renhuangs for the top. Another top-tier virtuoso was going to emerge from the Wangshan watchtower. From a distance away, a virtuoso was looking at them. The virtuosos from the Lingxiao Palace were present, and Ling He was among them. Not long ago, he ordered his men to investigate Yi Futian, and before long, he had obtained information on Yi Futian. Coincidentally, the virtuosos from the Yinyan continent had also arrived. He heard that a couple of months ago, the great Yin ancient royal family led an army of virtuosos from the Yinyan continent to the Dongxiao continent to provoke the Wangshan watchtower. There they were met with resistance. Another influential character was heading towards Wangshan watchtower at the same time. His name was Yi Liuonian, and he came from Eastern Deity Island. That one battle made the Millet Emperor personally invite him to join the Wangshan watchtower. He was a middle-level Renhuang with a perfect Great Path. Not only was he highly talented, but he was well-versed in alchemy and cultivation. He was also the heir to the Eastern Deity Island, and now, he had gained the favor of the Millet Emperor. Naturally, someone like him would be very cocky. There was no doubt of his talents. It was no wonder that Ling He would lose to him at the cliff. He also heard that months ago, the Yin Dongyang of the great Yin ancient royal family once fought with Yi Futian and lost. Ling He went over to the virtuosos of the divine palace of fluttering snow and bowed lightly. Ling He pays his respects to goddesses. The goddesses of the divine palace of fluttering snow wrapped their fists in greeting. Ling He was not any normal person. He was a disciple of the Lingxiao Palace, and they had a decent relationship with each other. Furthermore, it seemed like recently, Ling He was pursuing Qin Qing. Qin Qing. Ling He looked at Qin Qing. She was the goddess who was traveling with him that day at the cliff. Qin Qing was a disciple of the Lord of the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. Regardless of appearance or cultivation, she was a cut above the rest. Qin Qing nodded lightly, but her eyes were looking somewhere else. Following her line of sight, Ling He noticed that she was looking in Yi Futian's and Zhong Chan's direction. Obviously, Yi Futian left a rather deep impression on Qin Qing. Oh, so he is a practitioner of the Wangshan watchtower, Qin Qing said. Are you looking at Zhong Chan? Asked one of the women at the side. He has now become the most discussed person among all the factions. He had broken through to the high-level Renhuang level, with a perfect Great Path. He is fated to become one of the top-tier characters in the Donghua domain in the future. Qin Qing looked at where Zhong Chan stood at. Yi Futian was standing next to him. Who is the white-haired practitioner next to Zhong Chan? Qin Qing asked. Only then did many people notice Yi Futian. This white-haired youth indeed had an extraordinary aura. He was also very dashing. In fact, among everyone around him, he had the most handsome features. However, the world of cultivation did not care about the looks of a man. Rather, they were more concerned with his cultivation level. Especially at the Renhuang level, they completely do not care about the features of a man. Thus, Zhong Chan was the most eye-catching. In that case, why would Qin Qing notice Yi Futian? Yi Liuonian. At that moment, a practitioner with a very sophisticated aura walked up to the crowd from behind them. While she was not as physically attractive as Qin Qing, her extraordinary aura might even be stronger than Qin Qing's. Many people looked at her with respect. Sister, do you know him? Qin Qing asked. He is a practitioner of the Eastern Deity Island. A while ago, the Donglai goddess brought him to the Wangshan watchtower. At the entrance test to the Wangshan watchtower, and utterly defeated all the virtuosos. The prince of the great Yin ancient royal family, Yen Dongyang, led his army of virtuosos from the Yanyan continent to the entrance test and absolutely crushed the practitioners of the Dongxiao continent. However, he was stopped by Yi Futian and subsequently defeated by him, the lady said. Yi Futian is at the 4th Renhuang level. He has a perfect grade divine wheel. He is well versed in alchemy, swordsmanship, rhythmic sorcery and various other skills. It took him only one strike of his sword to defeat Yin Dongyang. Swordsmanship. A quizzical expression flashed through Qin Qing's eyes as she looked at Yi Futian. No wonder he could sense and comprehend the will of the axe at the cliff the other day. It seemed like he was an exceptionally outstanding practitioner. It looks like I lost to him for a good reason the other day. Ling He smiled. He seemed very casual, as though he was not bothered by that event. You all know him? Asked the lady. I met him when I was traveling in the Divine Ocean continent. He managed to decrypt the relics left behind as runes carved out by the thunder-punishing Skylord, said Qin Qing. The woman nodded her head lightly and looked at Yi Futian. Is this the heir chosen by the Eastern Deity Island? She thought. No matter who he was, it was unlikely that the great Yin ancient royal family was going to let him off. Yi Futian felt the stares and lifted his head to look towards the divine palace of fluttering snow. The Li Changxing beside him asked, Brother Yi, they are talking about you. When did you become acquaintances with the goddesses of the divine palace of fluttering snow? We have met once before, Yi Futian replied. We aren't really acquainted. Li Changxing nodded lightly. This rascal was quite eye-catching it seemed. They were only separated for a short while. And he had already got to know the people from the divine palace of fluttering snow. Furthermore, they seemed to think pretty highly of him. I am Ling He from the Lingxiao Palace. I did not know who you were back at the Divine Ocean, but now let's be acquaintances. Ling He nodded lightly at Yi Futian. He seemed to be rather friendly. Yi Futian glanced at him. That day, Ling He was especially overbearing and arrogant, but he will not be hostile towards someone who showed no malice, and so he also lightly nodded in response. However, he did not say much more either, and only responded in courtesy. He did not intend to be acquaintances with him. Seeing Yi Futian's attitude, Ling He's heart turned a little cold, but he did not show it. He thought that this prodigy who joined the Wangshan Watchtower was probably feeling pretty cocky at that moment. I am Qin Qing from the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. Qin Qing also nodded at Yi Futian. I am Yi Liunian. Yi Futian nodded in response. He decided to show a little more friendliness to Qin Qing, because Qin Qing did not act in such an unforgivably rude manner the other day. It was certainly not because she was beautiful. In a certain place in the crowd, someone was looking at these two parties conversing. They were the people from the Turtle Deity City Lord's office. They heard what the two groups were talking about. After all, they did not intentionally try to avoid interfering, so they roughly understood some things that were happening. This Ling He was so superficial. Yi Futian probably did not know what Ling He had done. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1998. Famous People. Chapter 1998. Famous People. Yi Liunian. A low voice echoed. The person who spoke was Ling He. I've heard that Brother Yi once displayed unrivaled power at Wangshan Watchtower. With those skills, you defeated all the virtuosos from the Yanyan continent, and even beat the great Yin prince with one strike of your sword. If I had known of Brother Ye's prowess, I would certainly have been far humbler back at the Divine Ocean. Someone secretly looked at Ling He, with some idea of what was going on. Yi Futian's eyes also narrowed slightly as he glanced at Ling He. He saw that Ling He's eyes carried an easy and natural smile, as though he highly admired Yi Futian. However, this made Yi Futian feel extremely uncomfortable. The virtuosos from the great Yin ancient royal family had also all arrived. There were so many of them just a distance away. For Ling He to say it in such a way, was he praising Yi Futian, or was he humiliating the great Yin ancient royal family? Of course, with the grudges between him and the great Yin ancient royal family, Yi Futian had already offended them. and so he didn't care if they were humiliated. He just disliked how Ling He behaved. If it was someone else, they might be sincerely praising him. But Ling He definitely was not. From his behavior at the cliff, Yi Futian could tell that he was highly arrogant and domineering. Even though he was humiliated, he left without saying anything. A person with such a personality would never sincerely praise Yi Futian, a person who had beat him not so long ago. Indeed, hearing what Ling He said, a faint aura of the great path reached over from afar. The virtuosos of the great Yin ancient royal family looked over, and someone had even started walking over. Yen Dongyang was standing right at the front, and beside him was a practitioner who was older than him. The practitioner had an extraordinary aura about him. He was luxuriously clothed in long brocade robes. His entire body emitted an air of nobility. It was as though he was a real dragon. Yen Hanxing, the crown prince of the great Yin ancient royal family. He is a level 9 Renhuang. Li Changxing told Yi Futian telepathically. Yi Futian looked towards him. This Yen Hanxing gave off an extremely intimidating pressure. He had handsomely sharp and chiseled features. He looked to be about 35 or 36 years old. He was the strongest among his generation of great Yin ancient royal family princes. His cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the Renhuang level. Yen Hanxing walked over, and instantly, many people stared at him. Quite a number of them had heard the news of the battle at Wangshan Watchtower. The great Yin ancient royal family led an entire army of virtuosos from the Yinyun continent to attack them, but they returned in defeat. In particular, Yen Dongyang had been defeated by a single sword strike. It was highly humiliating. Everyone knew that Ling He's words were undoubtedly a little sensitive and hit a sore spot. However, no one said it out loud. The great Yin ancient royal family had always been overbearing and tyrannical, so there was almost no chance that they would tolerate their loss of face. Everyone around kept silent. When Yen Hanxing stopped, he did not look at Yi Futian, but rather turned to look at Zhong Chan. To the crown prince of the great Yin ancient royal family, Yi Futian was but an insignificant junior, even if he was also a Renhuang. After all, Yen Hanxing had been cultivating for many years, and he had also been at the pinnacle of the Renhuang level for a long time. Naturally, he would not lower his status to deal with Yi Futian. I heard that Zhong Chan had broken through to the high Renhuang level, so I sent Dongyang to send our regards, and at the same time experience the strength of the practitioners of the Dongxiao continent. I hear that you still have a perfect great path, even after ascending to a high-level Renhuang. Congratulations, Yen Hanxing said with a rather hard tone as he looked at Zhong Chan. He gave off a faint pressure that caused discomfort to everyone around him. In particular, those with a low cultivation level felt a very strong pressure. It was not the might of the great path. Rather, it was a formless aura that emanated from him. Thank you, Zhong Chan replied with a smile, seeming quite casual about it. With his cultivation level and a perfect great path, even a level 9 Renhuang virtuoso would not be able to give him a strong pressure. A level 7 Renhuang with a perfect great path. If we are talking about combat abilities, that should be very comparable to a level 9 virtuoso. Yen Hanxing looked at Zhong Chan. I am quite expectant of how strong your gate to world suppression will be after you have become a high-level Renhuang, and just how much you have inherited from the Millet Emperor. Zhong Chan smiled. You'll definitely have a chance to see it. That person from the Badlands has yet to arrive. Having proven your path, I wonder if you can defeat him, Yen Hanxing continued. His tone made the practitioners of Wangshan Watchtower very uncomfortable. It gave off the vague feeling that he was the senior speaking to a junior. Even though if one considered the amount of time they have been cultivating, Zhong Chan indeed was Yen Hanxing's junior. With how much Zhong Chan had achieved, he was no longer inferior to him. In fact, he had greater potential. Why don't you ask yourself your chances of victory if you fought with that person from the Badlands? Li Changxing said from the side. Yen Hanxing glanced at him. Zhong Chan smiled silently. He was thinking of the exact same thing. Yen Hanxing's attitude made him a little uncomfortable. Even though he was a level 9 Renhuang, he may not necessarily defeat that person from the Badlands. Who wants to know? Why not just try? "You'll get your answer that way," said a strong, deep voice from afar. Many people looked in the direction into the distance and saw someone descend onto Turtle Peak. The aura from this column of people was terrifying. Most of them were dressed in black, and they gave off a formless, intangible pressure. Practitioners from the Badlands Divine Palace of the Badlands continent. Futian thought to himself as he looked at the row of practitioners. They should have come from the Western Badlands continent, which was a rather remote place in the Donghua domain. The Badlands Divine Palace was the protector and absolute ruler of the region. After numerous generations, and experiencing many cycles of prosperity and decline, it was still surviving. The virtuosos from the Badlands Divine Palace have also arrived. The surrounding virtuosos looked towards them. The Badlands continent was the most remote, and the Badlands Divine Palace did not have many ties with the other factions of the Donghua domain. Many people were still wondering if they would come at all. It seemed that no one wanted to miss Emperor Shi take on the tribulations. It was even more so the case for those standing at the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Many people looked at the practitioner of the Badlands Divine Palace who spoke. He was dressed in a black robe, and a somber aura emanated from him. His pair of eyes induced fear in whoever looked at them. It was as though whatever he looked at would rot and wither in an instant. No one knew his true name. Everyone only knew that he was the Badlands Divine Palace's desolation of this generation, the heir to the Badlands Divine Palace. The Lord of the Badlands Divine Palace was given the title of the Desolate God. Even though they were not god-level virtuosos, the Badlands Divine Palace had a very long history. It was said that in ancient times, people with such levels of cultivation had existed before. Furthermore, they had very ancient relics that were passed through numerous generations. Thus, they named themselves the Desolate Gods. The heir to the Desolate God was known as the Desolation. This was very similar to the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. They also claimed to be founded by a god-level figure. Most of the top-tier factions in the Divine Prefecture had very ancient roots. Wangshan Watchtower, on the other hand, had a much shorter histories. It was founded by the Millet Emperor himself. Desolation glanced at the Yan Hanqing who was speaking just now. A terrifying aura swirled around inside his pair of demonic pitch-black eyes. It was like he was provoking Yan Hanqing. "Do you want to give it a try?" Desolation asked Yan Hanqing. Hearing his words, many people let out a slightly eager expression. The most powerful people from various continents had arrived. Only that Titan, who was governing them all, was not present. However, they should have all arrived. It was just that they had yet to show themselves. Now, only that person from the domain chief's manor has not yet arrived, many people thought. Before Zhongchan, there were 3 people whom everyone most expected to become one of the most powerful figures in the entire Donghua domain. Among these 3 people, one was from the domain chief's manor. Among the other 2, one was the Desolation from the Badlands Divine Palace. As for the other one, was the lady beside Qin Qing, who previously told Qin Qing of Yi Futian's identity. She was Jiang Yueli, a disciple of the Lord of the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow, who was also known as the Sword Goddess. Zhongchan was the 4th person to achieve such heights. A gathering like this would definitely rouse excitement. Many people were staring at Yan Hanqing. How would he reply to Desolation? Yan Hanqing turned around, and his sight settled on Desolation. Even though he had a perfect great path, Yan Hanqing was ultimately still the crown prince of the great Yan ancient royal family. He was an especially powerful character. Even though he was facing Desolation, his eyes still carried a noble look of arrogance. He replied nonchalantly, "You are still a junior. It would not be fair for me if we sparred. You might have a chance if you advanced to the 8th level." Before breaking through to the high-level Renhuang, his divine wheel was also of a perfect grade. He was off by only one small step. So certainly, he was not a typical level 9 Renhuang either. "I thought you would attack me head-on," Desolation replied, glancing casually at Yan Hanqing. After that, he did not even look at him. It seemed that in Desolation's eyes, this crown prince of the great Yan ancient royal family was not worth his attention. Those who caught his attention must necessarily be those who were similarly outstanding. In other words, those who had a perfect great path. Desolation took a look at Zhongchan, and when their eyes met, everyone felt a tinge of rivalry. However, apart from the leaders of various large factions, Jiang Yueli should be the strongest in the entire Donghua domain among all the other virtuosos. She was already at the pinnacle of the level 8 Renhuang. If she broke through to the 9th level, the divine palace of fluttering snow would become significantly more powerful. However, for people like them who have already arrived at such a high level of cultivation, breaking through to the next level was extremely difficult. The difference between any two levels was almost like a moat that could not be crossed. At that moment, the mighty pressure in the skies became even more intense. The clouds and winds shifted, and from the cultivation grounds of Emperor Shi emerged a row of people. They looked at the virtuosos gathered in front of them and said, "The practitioners from top-tier factions of any continent are welcome inside. As for the rest, please remain in the outer circle." Everyone understood what he meant. It seemed that Emperor Shi could feel that his tribulation was arriving, and invited the virtuosos in. However, he only extended an invitation to the practitioners of the various top-tier factions. Nonetheless, they all understood. Emperor Shi was kind enough to allow everyone to stay on Turtle Peak. Even if all of them wanted to enter, there was not enough space to contain all of them. "Thank you, Emperor Shi," many people responded. One after another, they walked towards the people who emerged. The conflict here was temporarily resolved. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1999, Flattery. Chapter 1999. Flattery. At the top of the Turtle Peak was a villa shrouded in an ethereal deity aura. There were quite a number of structures built here. It was the residential area of Emperor Shi and his protégés. The area was huge, and when Yi Futian and his friends entered, they saw that it was already filled with many people who were chatting about casually. Millet Emperor. Yi Futian's sight settled on a particular individual. The Millet Emperor had already arrived along with a few other extraordinary characters. They were likely practitioners of the same level as the Millet Emperor. Everyone understood that these were the titans of the Donghua domain. They arrived inconspicuously. No one noticed their presence from the outside. Furthermore, no one dared to use their divine consciousness to peek into the cultivation grounds of Emperor Shi. This showed extreme disrespect to their seniors, so no one had the guts to do it. Yi Futian looked at where they were standing and located the person standing in the group's center. That person was dressed in very simple robes and looked to be in his 50s. Despite his age, he seemed to be alive with energy, and he certainly had an extraordinary air about him. He chatted with a smile on his face, and the feeling he gave off made people feel very comfortable. It was as though they were bathed in a spring breeze. Interestingly, one could not feel any aura from him. It was like he was just an ordinary human. However, if he was standing here, there was no way he was just any ordinary human. Emperor Shi, Yi Futian thought to himself. He was someone who had a perfect great path, and was about to experience the tribulations of gods. According to what Li Changxing said earlier, there was no one in the Donghua domain who had overcome the 3 tribulations. No one had even overcome the first tribulation. This was uncertain only for one person, and that was the manor chief of the Donghua domain chief's manor. Li Changxing mentioned that no one knew what level the manor chief was at, and no one knew if he had overcome the great path tribulations of gods. However, none of the other virtuosos had ever overcome it before. Setting aside the matter of overcoming it, basically, no one was eligible to even experience the tribulations. After all, one would only have the chance if their great path was perfect, and in the Donghua domain, a vast majority of virtuosos were fake emperors. Thus, once Emperor Shi managed to overcome the tribulations successfully, he would most likely become the number 1 person in the Donghua domain. If the domain chief manor's chief concealed his power, then he would at least be the number 1 practitioner apart from the manor chief. With such a level of cultivation, he would be considered a top-tier character, even in the entire divine prefecture. When everyone arrived, they all looked in the direction of Emperor Shi. In return, Emperor Shi also looked at the crowd before him. With just a glance, everyone mistakenly felt that he was looking at each of them. Emperor Shi had a kind smile on his face as he spoke to the crowd. I haven't been to the outside world in such a long time, so I have not yet met the junior practitioners of the Donghua domain. Ever since the age of chaos back then, Donghuang the Great unified the entire divine prefecture, creating the age of peace that lasted for numerous years. Now, with every passing year, more outstanding juniors have emerged, and it has only been a little over 300 years since the unification of the divine prefecture. I believe that with time, there will be a greater number of especially powerful figures who, like me, will experience the tribulations. In the age of chaos, there were too many prodigies and top-tier factions that were destroyed. It was only in the recent 300 or so years that the world had become far more peaceful. When all the powerful and famous figures managed to survive till now, there would be more virtuosos in the world. These juniors are still a long way from Senior Emperor Shi. In this generation, there are only a few people who have managed to forge a perfect grade divine wheel when ascending to the high-level Renhuang. An elderly man smiled. It is the same for every generation. When the next generation attempts to break through to the high Renhuang level, more influential people will emerge. Emperor Shi smiled. Indeed, in the next generation, there are many with great potential distributed across various factions. They are all very exceptional. Didn't Zhong Chan from the Wangshan Watchtower succeed not too long ago? Someone smiled, causing many people to look toward the Millet Emperor. Zhong Chan is indeed not bad. The Millet Emperor smiled. Looking at Zhong Chan, he said, Zhong Chan, come over and meet Emperor Shi and your seniors. Yes, teacher. Zhong Chan nodded lightly and walked towards them. Stopping in front of them, he bowed and said, Junior Zhong Chan pays his respects to Emperor Shi and seniors. Emperor Shi nodded. You're still so young. Certainly in the future, you will become more powerful. Who are the other powerful juniors in our Donghua domain now? There are Jiang Yueli from the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow, Desolation from the Badlands continent, as well as the son of the Manor Chief. The three of them achieved a perfect grade divine wheel as high-level Renhuangs before Zhong Chan, said the leader of the Nanhua clan of the Nanhua continent with a smile. He had an otherworldly air about him. He looked at the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow and the Badlands Divine Palace. Both Jiang Yueli and Desolation were there. Jiang Yueli pays her respects to Senior Emperor Shi. Jiang Yueli bowed lightly. On the other hand, Desolation bowed to Emperor Shi across the air without saying anything. The practitioners of the Badlands continent were all loners and arrogant. They were very used to being alone. Towards Emperor Shi, however, Desolation still maintained a level of respect. It was his respect towards a virtuoso. This was someone who was going to overcome the tribulations of gods. It was a goal that he was going to pursue in the future. Emperor Shi nodded at the two of them. He asked Jiang Yueli, Did your master not come? Teacher says she will come, Jiang Yueli responded. As they were talking, a powerful aura permeated the region from afar. In the next instance, a beam of sword radiance descended in front of Jiang Yueli. A sharp-looking woman appeared. She had a rather cold air about her. Standing there, she was like a sword. It was like she was one with the heavenly path. She was the lord of the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow, and the sword goddess of the Donghua domain. This sword goddess was honorably known as the top swordsman in the entire Donghua domain. Since Emperor Shi was going to experience the tribulations, I must attend this event, the sword goddess said. I thought the same too. After all, you will also have such a day in the future. Emperor Shi smiled. The sword goddess was also a top Renhuang with a perfect great path, and one of the most powerful people in the Donghua domain. Previously, this sword goddess was among the top 3 in the ranked list of the most powerful figures in the Donghua domain. The sword goddess did not respond to this comment. Emperor Shi looked at the people behind her and said, It seems like powerful characters will emerge from the next generation of the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow. In the Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow, apart from Jiang Yueli, who had ascended to the high Renhuang level with a perfect great path. The other direct disciples of the palace lord, Chu Hanqi and Qin Qing, are both middle-level Renhuangs with a perfect grade divine wheel. They will surely have a chance too in the future. The next generation of the divine palace of fluttering snow is indeed exceptional, someone said with a smile. The person who spoke was the Lingxiao palace lord. He was dressed very lavishly and had an extraordinary air about him. There are many exceptional people in the next generation of the Donghua domain. And even disregarding the domain chief's manner, various factions have influential characters of their own. Furthermore, the divine prefecture is so vast and boundless, we might not even know of many prodigies who exist, said Jiang Yueli, who was standing behind the sword goddess. She seemed to want the divine palace of fluttering snow to avoid catching everyone's attention. I've also heard that Ling He had met a rather powerful person on the divine ocean continent. He is the descendant of the supreme deity Donglai, right? The Lingxiao palace lord said as he looked at the Millet Emperor. The Millet Emperor and the Donglai goddess furrowed their brows slightly. The supreme deity Donglai used to be one of the few standing at the pinnacle of the cultivation world before he was murdered. His death was a very sensitive issue. After hearing his words, the eyes of the overlord of the great Yin ancient royal family turned sharp, and he glanced at where Yi Futian was standing. I was only lucky to be able to enter Eastern Deity Island and obtain the favor of the Donglai goddess who took care of me. Yi Futian smiled, noticing that everyone was looking at him. He glanced at the overlord of the Lingxiao palace and saw that he was smiling back at him. However, the smile made him feel very uncomfortable. He did not want to be in the limelight. Today's main character was Emperor Shi. With his low cultivation level and lack of any strong backing, what was he supposed to do standing in the limelight in the presence of all the top-tier factions in the Donghua domain? You are too humble, the Lingxiao palace overlord smiled. Considering your current cultivation level as a middle-level Renhuang, with what you have achieved previously, you can rank at least among the top 3 in the Donghua domain. As he finished speaking, the way that many people looked at Yi Futian instantly changed. Yi Futian furrowed his brow. Is he flattering me? He thought to himself. Furthermore, the other party was of an extraordinary status. He was the Lingxiao palace overlord, and one of the most influential practitioners in the world. Being given such high praise from this man, not only should Yi Futian not refute it, but he should thank him for it. This made Yi Futian extremely uncomfortable. With all the top-tier factions in the entire Donghua domain present, what was his motive in praising him so highly? Yi Futian bowed lightly and said, Senior, you flatter me. My cultivation is still rather superficial. I certainly do not deserve such high praise. The last time when I met the prince of the Lingxiao palace while comprehending the way at the divine ocean, I noticed that my own demeanor is far behind his. What are you talking about, Brother Yi? Ling He said. It was you, Brother Yi, who managed to comprehend the secrets of the cliff at the divine ocean. I was only lucky. Before, we had some disagreements when comprehending the way. When Brother Ling bluntly said that we were wrong, we felt shamed by that extraordinary aura and strong confidence that you exuded. We recognized that we were inferior, and Brother Ling's aura certainly overpowered ours. Even our mindfulness of the path was a little damaged. It was only after giving our all in our struggle that we managed to decipher the secrets of the cliff by accident. I still have to thank Brother Ling for sparking our potential, Yi Futian replied with a slight smile. He treated Ling He with the same exaggerated praise. It was as though the person who lost then was him and not Ling He. Indeed, hearing Yi Futian's reply, Ling He's looks in his eyes became a little strange. His eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at Yi Futian. Was he mocking him? At that time, Yi Futian did not in the least bit behave in a cowardly way. In fact, he was very overbearing in his response. You too, there is no need to argue over this. At that moment, a silhouette walked out from behind Emperor Shi. He looked at Yi Futian and asked, Was it you who managed to decipher the relics left behind on the cliff? Yi Futian looked at him. The person was rather large, and his long hair was untied and flowed behind him, giving off a rather wild feeling. To Yi Futian, he gave off similar vibes as Emperor Shi, He was another prominent character. Furthermore, this person was standing behind Emperor Shi, so Yi Futian could almost guess his identity. I was just lucky, Yi Futian replied. Not bad, the man nodded. Back when I was comprehending the way at the cliff, I carved those markings casually. I did not expect that anyone could really decipher and comprehend it. You have unlimited potential. With this sentence, he had hinted at his identity, the thunder-punishing Sky Lord. Yi Futian bowed lightly. I gained quite a bit at the cliff. Thank you, Senior Thunder-punishing Sky Lord. This was your opportunity, so there is no need to thank me, the thunder-punishing Sky Lord replied casually. He seemed to be rather impressed by Yi Futian. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.